Hey everybody, welcome to Grimm's Forge Gaming. Today we are going to cover my Magplar, my Magicka Templar Wonder Woman. And as a backstory, I created this character for my daughters. They really like Wonder Woman, and when we first started leveling this character, letting my daughters play with it, we had a health regen build, and I just let them run around in open world and light attack things to death. But it was never meant for this character to actually go into PvP, and then my daughter started watching on YouTube um, game recordings and stuff like that, and I thought, okay, well, let's make a video of it and get it out there so they can actually see their Wonder Woman and BGs and things like that. Anyways, we had a Wonder Woman 1.0, I guess, a Wonder Woman, her first build, and she was a 5 light, 2 heavy, and this was pre-Greymore. We are now in Greymore, and to kind of address the lack of healing, we've went to a heavy armor setup. So this is a Magplar that is 5 heavy and 2 light, or it could be 7 heavy, whichever you like. And we like the stats a lot. The stats are pretty strong on this build. And anyways, we'll jump right in. First thing we're running here is Grothdar. There's actually a reason we're running Grothdar. We need the added pressure from this monster set on the build when you're running a heavy armor setup, because you lose critical as in a heavy armor setup. If I were going to change anything, I would drop Grothdar off the build, and we would add the Torque of Tonal Constancy for even more recoveries on this build. But right now, Grothdar is the play, I think, for a 7 heavy armor setup. Another thing too, our back bar is sword and board, and you don't need to go sword and board on this. You could actually go resto if you want, and maybe go infused resto staff with spell damage glyph, and you could push out even more damage in this. The damage on this is actually pretty respectable too for a heavy armor. I was very surprised and impressed with this build. Extremely happy with the build. Anyways, Grothdar is our monster set. Need the added pressure. Next set we are running is Eternal Vigor, and this is probably best in slot for a lot of different builds. As a matter of fact, I just used this on a Necromancer health regen build, and it was awesome. I just used this on a werewolf build, a stamina werewolf build, and it was awesome. And here we are on a Magplar, and it's awesome. Okay, I'm just really impressed by this set right now. I'm not trying to be a one-trick pony, but I'm interested to see what we can do with this set on a lot of different builds. Like, how do you build around it and make it into something? Anyways, this was the best fit, so we're running 5 heavy Eternal Vigor, and you can see we're running the prismatic enchants on everything, and she's super excited about that. We are running Impen on these, and I think I still need to transmute these to the proper one. Unless you want to keep the training, go right ahead. The next set that we are running is Amber Plasm, and I think that Amber Plasm actually kind of gels with Eternal Vigor very well. And when you look at Eternal Vigor, it's a lot of recoveries, right? You've got Magicka stamina and health, and then max health, and then it adds an extra 337 stamina and Magicka recovery while above 50% health. If you fall below 50%, you get an extra 1,000 health recovery. And so, anyways, when you look at the changes that they made to Amber Plasm has a lot of recoveries. 269 recovery for Magicka stamina and health. 1 line of spell damage, 1 line of spell crit, and some max Magicka. And so we are running a lightning staff. Lightning staff actually, it has a chance to proc concussed on a target, which increases their damage that they're going to receive. B, Lightning Staff boosts our Puncturing Sweeps damage because it is currently an area of effect attack, and so an AoE attack, and so a Lightning Staff actually buffs that, and that's nice. And you get a couple extra bonuses as far as recoveries go too with a Destro Staff when you look at that. With the Destro Staff equipped, when you kill an enemy with the Destro Staff ability, you restore 3600 Magicka. And so we're not using any um, abilities, but for whatever reason, I will occasionally see this 3600 Magicka come in. And so I don't know if that's just because I hit him with a light attack or a heavy attack and we got it, but there it is. I would have to imagine that's probably it. But um, and equipping a lightning staff increases your damage done with area of effect attacks. This is the thing that we were talking about. And increase your chance to apply burning, concuss, and shield status effects with a staff applied. So that's great. And fully charged heavy attacks have a 100% chance do damage to nearby enemies for 100% of the damage. So when we are channeling a heavy attack, I think I've found that to be my best sustain tool, is holding the way better than trying to hit light and heavy attacks with a sword and board, right? But my best sustain option is to hold a heavy attack with the lightning staff. It's still putting some pressure into the target, and we're getting Magicka back when we get to that point. We're running 2 infused right now, spell damage, and I will be infusing this one once we get a chance. We've talked about the gear. If I end up going the Torque of Atonal Constancy here, which is going to add another 450 Magicka recovery when we're under 50% stamina, or it adds an extra 450 stamina recovery when we're under 50% Magicka. And so that kind of works really well with this recovery type situation that we're looking at. And but anyways, let's look at the stats here real quick, and then we're going to talk about a couple other things here. On our sword and board bar, standing in our rune, you can see that our spell resistance is 39,000. And so even if we were to be debuffed with major vulnerability, or not major vulnerability, but major fracture, sorry. Even with major fracture on, we would be above cap as far as resistances go, and that's good. Physical resistance is at 37,000. This is our back bar, sword and board buff bar. 3,000 crit resistance, and I wouldn't worry about spell damage just yet because we haven't buffed up. We are using degeneration as our spell buff, and when we buff up completely, we will get to 3,398 spell damage. 3,398 spell damage. So 3,400 spell damage on a 7 heavy armor. That's really nice. And let's talk about how we actually accomplish that, just so you know. Number 1, still leveling it, but degeneration is going to give me 20% additional spell damage when I'm on my resto staff, and then our spell damage actually goes up even higher when we hit this ability, which is called Living Dark. And so if we want to get our spell damage all the way up to that 3,500, that's how we'll do it. We'll hit degeneration on the target, hit Living Dark, and we've got 3,400. Now, once we infuse this, we'll basically get another 100 spell damage out of that. Might take us to 3,500 spell damage, and we could even put a spell damage glyph on our back bar. Now, I tell you, if you don't do sword and board and you go Amber Plasm Resto Staff, Amber Plasm, by the way, is a light armor set. So the reason I have it here is because we wanted to run 5 heavy, and so you need to have the jewelry and the weapons for Amber Plasm. But anyways, if you happen to have an Amber Plasm Resto Staff, that might be a better option for you, especially from the regen standpoint, because of some of the passives with a Resto Staff, like Cycle of Life. Fully charged heavy attacks restore 15% more Magicka, and that even gets higher as you dump 2 points into it. So that's really nice. Plus, you'll increase your healing received channeling Resto Heavy Attack to get that Magicka back, and then turn around, jump right back into the fight. And so Resto Staff's a really good play if you don't want to go the sword and board route. But anyways, if you did go Resto Staff, like we were saying before, you could infuse the Resto Staff, and if you infuse the Resto Staff and put a spell damage glyph, that's like an extra 400 spell damage, so that puts us near the 4K spell damage on a 7 heavy armor. I was really impressed with the damage output on this build and the durability. Obviously, we're way over cap on some of our resistances. So, and then, like we said, the only thing that's really lacking is going to be the spell critical, and you know, we could get that a little bit higher with running certain abilities and stuff, but it's just not it's not an option for us in the build. But so anyways, it just kind of hangs out there. If you wanted to get that additional spell critical, I could tell you that you would want to run um, Sunfire either more. If you can see, upon activating, gain major prophecy, increase your spell critical by 2191. So this is an ability that you'd find a spot on your bar for, but I really like where my front and back bar are. And I have mained Magplar for a very long time. My actual main is called Spartan, and I've had him since the beginning, just shortly after beta, and I've played him as Magplar. And the only time I've not played him as a Magplar is switching him to Stamina to get a couple Stamplar tank builds out, which we have coming around the corner as well. But anyways, when we look at our resistances, like we said, on the sword and board, we're really beefy. 39,000, 37,000. We are in CP Imperial City right now, so these things will go down, and we will talk about CP before we leave. Now, when I move out of my rune, those resistances go down. But we're still at 37,000, which is 3,000 over cap, and we are over cap right now by 500 in physical resistance. So even out of our rune on our sword and board, we're over cap. Now, when we are in our rune on our destro staff, so we're being offensive right now. We're over cap at 36,609 spell resistance, and our physical resistance is just a hair under cap at 33,969. Basically, we're at cap at physical resistance. And then outside of our rune on our destro staff, we are just a hair under our spell resistance cap, 33,969, and our physical resistance goes down to 31,329. And those are really respectable resistance numbers, though, for a build that could push anywhere from 3,400 to 4K spell damage in a 5 heavy, right? We really like that. And let's look at a couple of the other things here on the build. Max Magicka is at 27,000, just under 28,000, and I like that. We could actually probably take this health out, put that in there, maybe even the stamina if we want, or allot some of the health into stamina to get this at a nice round 20,000. But anyways, if you wanted to get this to 30,000 Max Magicka, you could, no problem. I like where the health's at. We are a heavy armor build, and after all, this is Wonder Woman. She needs a lot of health and a lot of firepower, right? A lot of resistances. We want her to be hard to kill, and then to be a Magplar and to have 20k stamina, that's great, because breaking free, dodge rolling, and things like that, we need to avoid some damage. And so I would say that the 15 to 20k is a safe mark, especially when you get into BGs and stuff like that, no CP. I've run some Magplar builds. Actually, I think our first iteration of Wonder Woman build, the first iteration of the build, she might have actually just been at like 11k or 12k max stamina. And the times that I died, it was usually because I was out of stamina. And so, anyways, aim for 15 to 20k, and you can do that through enchants, food, and your attribute allotment. Okay, and you can see on our back bar our spell penetration, we are in 5 heavy. We're between the 4 and 5k no matter which bar we are on, so I would say that's fairly on the low, but we are, again, a heavy armor build. Okay, so That is the gear. That's the stats. We looked at the stats buffed minus the spell damage, and you'll just have to take my word for that. That we're at the 3,398 when we're fully buffed, and we can easily hit 3,500 to 4K with some minor changes that we had discussed. We talked about the resistances on the sword and board, both in and out of the rune. We talked about our resistances both in and out of the rune on our destro staff. Sorry, we did mention that you could backbar a resto staff instead of sword and board, but from a thematic or theme standpoint, Wonder Woman has a shield and she has a sword, and so when we're zipping around battlegrounds and stuff like that, this is more of a theme based, and we're really darn tanky, you know. So we talked about our spell critical too and how we could drive that up. Let's jump into the abilities. So I played this style of play for a Magplar for the longest time, and as soon as we made the jump to a Destro staff, anyways, we're running toppling charge, and unbuffed toppling charge is going to do 4,500 damage. But the most important thing is the stun. It stuns the target for 3 seconds and sets them off balance, so they're taking additional damage. So when you set a target off balance and they're taking damage, and then we apply concuss, they're taking damage, and that's great. This also, they changed the distance that you could gap close to a target, and you can now gap close at point blank range with toppling charge, and that's great. So you can also see that the range on it is 22 meters, so it's um, I've had the problem where people are outside that range and not able to gap close to them. But anyways, we're running puncturing sweeps. It's the staple for a Magplar, and unbuffed right now we're at 2,900 magic damage. This is an AoE attack, and then it also currently it's an AoE attack. There's some changes that might are coming around the corner that might change that. But each strike reduces the movement speed of the closest enemy by 40% for 1 second, and that's important to know too. This is how you keep pesky night blades in front of you and people from getting away from you applying this. Now, if they are running snow treaders or anything like that, I think that they'll probably just pull away from you with that. And you also heal for 45% of the damage done. I can tell you with the changes to healing through Greymoor, this ability took a hit as far as being able to sustain or keep yourself healthy, keep your health full with this, and so that was a problem. It's important to know we actually have this built because of that particular way. Purifying Light is our damage modifier, and this is also a way that we have additional healing coming in. So we want to make sure we get Purifying Light on the target for the last effect. When the effect ends, a pool of sunlight remains attached to the enemy, healing you and nearby allies for 1,800 health every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. And so between the healing coming in from this and the healing coming in from keeping that on them, and the healing that we have coming in from Living Dark, basically you just envelop yourself in a sphere of darkness, and anytime you take direct damage attacks to this, you're going to get healed for basically 2,000 health. And so these three abilities kind of paired together will help keep us off our back bar, so we're not having to spam Breath of Life and things like that. So anyways, that you definitely want to remember to keep those on, or you will find yourself going to the back bar. We have Elemental Drain. This is our major breach, so that way we can strip the target that we're attacking of some of their resistances. And the combination of these two together is very nice, and then the fact that we can get concussed on them because we are using a lightning staff. All synergizes very well. But Elemental Drain, we want to keep this on them, and also Elemental Drain applies minor Magicka steal, so for 23 seconds, causing you and your allies to restore 3,000 Magicka every 1 second. And because regens, actually we need to look at the regens on this build, that reminds me, but regens are calculated every 2 seconds, so this is the equivalent of 600 magic recovery as long as you keep this on them. and you're doing damage to them, you have an additional 600 magic recovery. Very important to know, okay? So 600 additional magic recovery from elemental drain. We're running Crescent Sweep, and Crescent Sweep is got a very low cost at 71 ultimate, and you can see the tooltip on it at 8,000 damage, and then it does another 3,300 magic every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. So there's going to be 3 more ticks of 3,200. So between 9 and 10k extra dot damage coming in after you hit someone with this. So that's a pretty good ultimate right there. And another thing is enemies in your path will be hit for 60% more damage. Well, as long as you toppling charge to somebody and CC them and hit them with this, you're going to they're going to be in your path, right? And so 8,000 unbuffed, 8,000 damage, just add another 60% onto it, okay? And that puts that burst damage potential of this a lot better. So this is definitely one of the better ultimates from a PvP burst potential standpoint or pressure standpoint. Where my front bar is at currently is where I play both my Magplars, and I've tested a lot of different things, and I really like this setup. And the common play on our offensive bar here is going to be if we get the jump on them, they don't see us coming. I'm going to make sure that I get Elemental Drain on them. I'm going to hit Purifying Light on them. I'm going to hit my Living Dark and then Gap Close into them, which stuns them or CCs them, and then we're going to finish the duration of this Purifying Light damage multiplier with Puncturing Sweeps, Light Attack combo, or if my ultimate is ready, which is ready a lot at 71 ultimate, we'll actually gap close, and as soon as we hit him with that CC, we'll crescent sweep and then put damage into him. This all works very well. It's very fluid. I have a video. We're going to have BG footage of Wonder Woman here too. It's real soon. I had a game that was 15-0, another one that I was like 16-8, and it was a chaos ball, and almost all 8 of my deaths are from running the ball. But anyways, it's a really strong build. Looking at the back bar, we've got Degeneration. This is our access to major sorcery, so we have an extra 20% spell damage coming in. We're running Honor the Dead because of the heal anyone who is below 75% health, and it restores 60% of the ability's cost over 6 seconds. That's great considering it's almost a 4,400 magic cost ability. And I can tell you this thing was hit so hard with Greymoor. I've seen some really crappy heals from this. I've seen like some 2,500 heals from this. Not even worth the expense. Not even worth the expense. You need to find a way to kite, dodge roll, CC, get the hell out of dodge, right? And so I've seen some good heals from it too, but healing right now is very sporadic in Greymoor. We're running Channeled Acceleration. You can run the other morph, which is Race Against Time, and Race Against Time adds a snare removal. As a Magplar, we already have a snare removal, but if you want to go that route, it's instant cast as well. I think it's important to have this ability on your sword and board bar if we're going to try and tank down or be ultra tanky, because we have a Psijic Order ability on our back bar. When we hold block, we get this additional shield, and that's pretty nice. So anyways, Channeled Acceleration's the way I went, and mostly that's because the major expedition lasts for 12 seconds. And so while I'm tooling around the battleground on my sword and board bar, we're zipping around on that. We're as tanky as we could possibly be, right? And if I see somebody that we're getting ready to jump in on, because I'm already on my sword and board bar, I'll make sure I'll hit Channeled Acceleration one more time. You could do either or, but we want to make sure we get Degeneration on the target, starting the process, because for the next 20 seconds we're going to have an extra 20% spell damage, and then we're going to hit our Channeled Acceleration and get into the fight. So that way we have that major expedition for the 12 seconds. So at least the start of the fight we're moving quicker. We are running Ritual Retribution. A couple things about this. Number one, I think the heal from this is underrated, and there are times where I will see better returns making sure that I fight in this area than standing around and holding block and trying to hit Honor the Dead. So make sure you get this down, especially if there's a fight in an area that you know you're going to be in. Now the problem with this is it's 4,600 Magicka, and so from a sustain standpoint, this isn't helping your sustain at all, but it's going to help you stay in the fight, and it's also going to cleanse things. Also, because of the magic cost, you really need to decide if something is worth the expense. You know, if it's a really small dot, I wouldn't waste the Magicka trying to get that off of you, as tanky as we are, and the health recoveries and everything. Which reminds me again, we need to look at the recoveries, regens. So. And then Channeled Focus. This is our form of Major Resolve, and it's going to basically give us an extra 5,300 physical resistance and spell resistance. We are a Nord, and we have the Rugged passive. We have CP allotted towards resistances as well. And then this ability right here is awesome. Also, if you look, it says you also recover 240 Magicka every 1 second. That's important because 240 magic equates to just about 500 extra magic recovery. So one of our abilities gives us an extra 600 magic recovery, elemental drain from our front bar, and one of them gives us an extra 500 magic recovery from our back bar. That's 1100 additional magic recovery just for making sure we have those abilities up. So when we look at our recoveries, remember that we actually have an extra 1100 more than that. And on the back bar, we're running Remembrance, and I would say that I'm still leveling some things on Wonder Woman, but maybe Shield Wall might be the play that you want to do, and then you go Spell Wall so it reflects all ranged abilities. The reason I say this might be the play with Sword and Board on your back bar better than this, a couple reasons. But number one, Spell Wall, when you end up getting Spell Wall, it's reflecting and blocking all attacks, which is going to give your heals, or your because this is a hot, this is your burst heal, but this is a hot, this is a hot, this is a hot, and this is based off them trying to do damage to you. But you've got a lot of hots ticking, and Spell Wall might give you the reprieve you need on the Sword and Board, and it's a fairly low ultimate cost at 128. So you could drop this here and just hit Spell Wall often, and then just make sure that you're watching your regens very closely and staying in the fight. And I'm going to play around with that, I think, a little bit. We're going to move our points around, and we might explore that a little bit. But anyways, let's look at our recoveries here real quick. We're sitting at 1,600, just under 1,700 magic recovery. Health recovery's at 1,800, and stamina recovery's at 1,650. We've got really good recoveries on this build. Also, you could basically add another 1,100 on top of this 1,600, which is going to give you 2,700 magic recovery. 2,700 magic recovery on this build. I can tell you that that's about 1,000 extra magic recovery than is needed to just do a puncturing sweep light attack weave. Just that combo will keep you in the fight. As far as recoveries or regens go, 1,700 is what you need Magicka recovery to just puncturing sweep light attack, puncturing sweep light attack your till they're dead. So to hit 2,700 magic recovery is pretty nice with those two abilities, you know, giving us that extra 1,100 magic recovery. Another thing to note too about our health recovery is when we were up to 1,800 health recovery, when we're up to 1,800 health recovery, we have an armor set that Eternal Vigor gives us an extra 1,000 health recovery if we fall below 50% health. And so that's going to take us to 2,800 health recovery. The fact that we're in 5-7, we're in 7 heavy. The fact that we're in 7 heavy armor, adds to this as well. But the fact that we're in 7 heavy armor, our resistances are where they're at, and then we have the potential to get up to 2800 health recovery. We feel very stout. We feel very tanky. I had talked about this before in other videos, and I did have somebody comment on it, but resistances, when you invest in resistances, it offsets damage coming into you, right? Health recovery does the same. When you invest into health recovery, it passively offsets damage that is being put into you. It makes it so the attacker has to out damage the additional health recovery that you have coming in, let alone the hots and everything else that you're doing and stuff like that. It just makes it that much harder for them to gain ground on you, right? And so the same way that you invest in physical resistance and spell resistance, and it makes you tanky or feel tanky, health recovery makes you feel more tanky. It will passively offset damage that's being put into you, and that's important to know. Now, the combination of really good resistances and really good health recovery, that's scary. And so anyways, this heavy armor build, it's sitting in a really nice spot. So we talked about abilities, we looked at the abilities buffed. Let's jump into the food that we're using is Bewitched Sugar Skulls. We want the max stats, max health, max stam, max magicka, great. And then our health recovery is increased by almost another 400. Synergizes well with what we're trying to do here. And the Mundus stone that we are using is spell damage. We don't need additional magic recovery. We don't need resistances. Maybe we could go with the lever for more penetration because we are a heavy armor build. But just going spell damage is great. And from what I know, next patch, the way Magicka classes are going to work, it's not solely going to be based off of max magicka. It's going to be a combination of max magicka and spell damage, which is going to put this build in a really nice spot. So, because, 3,500 to 4K spell damage is pretty nice. And so, also, like we had mentioned, we are a Nord. And the rugged passive is one of the most important passives if you're trying to make a tanky build or tanky anything, right? Nord has this extra 4K physical and spell resistance, and you really can't beat that. Another nice thing about Nords is Stalwart. You get an additional 1500 max magicka, and when you take damage, you gain 5 ultimate. And this can occur every 10 seconds, and so as a tanky player, you're going to be taking damage, and so you just have built-in ult generation. Can't beat that. And we have some extra max magicka, and then cold resistance is good as well. And as far as passives go, just make sure you get all your class passives. That's always a thing. Whatever weapons that you decide to do, you can usually pick those up. I need some extra points here. Like I said, we did not travel the world picking up sky shards. I was trying to teach my daughters to play the game. They're very interested in this game, which is awesome. You'll Destro Staff or Resto if you're doing Resto on your back bar. And then the way the light armor is going to work, I don't have any light armor on this build, so I don't even need these 3 passives, so there's some extra points for me. Right now we are 7 heavy, so you want to make sure you get that. Here's some nice things about being 7 heavy. You can see our health recovery is increased by 28%, and that's how we're able to get that silly health recovery numbers. And then you add Eternal Vigor's proc on the end of that, and you're sitting really good. Also, as we're taking damage, we're going to get an extra. We're going to get 757 stamina and magicka back as we take damage. We have an extra 14% health because we're in 7 heavy, so that's great. And increase the max magicka or stamina, your heavy attacks restored by 25%. This is really nice when paired with the Resto staff on the back bar, and you're getting like an extra 50% magicka back when you channel a heavy attack, and so that's important to know. But just running 7 heavy with a Destro staff and channeling a heavy attack, this has helped me get magicka back and stay in fights. And then increase your healing received by 8%. This is actually one of the reasons that we went to a heavy armor setup. We were taking a lot of damage in a light armor setup, and with healing being where it's at, we weren't able to heal through the damage it was taking in. We were taking in, so it's just time to go heavy and time to add, tank down on everything. Let's get the resistances pumped up, and let's get our recoveries pumped up, and let's get our health recovery pumped up, and let's get our max stats pumped up. And so this is a pretty beefy build. I can tell you this: if you wanted to tank with this build in a PVE, you could tank with this, because when you're looking at the stats right now, what we would do is you would take some of your Magicka and start dumping it into health, because outside of here we're going to lose some health. And do you need to be a 30k health tank? Probably. If you're doing some of the really hard content, you would want to. So just reallot your points to make this a viable tank for normal and vet dungeons. And then as far as trials go, Nephis has some. He's probably the tank master, right? So you would want to check out Nephis and see what he has for a Magplar tank. He probably honestly doesn't go Magplar tank. It would be a DK route because of their passives and stuff. But can it be done? Absolutely. And I leveled Spartan as a Magplar tank almost exclusively way back in the day, and people are like, man, that's an awesome build. So anyways, the game's changed. So we looked at our food, our Mundus. We talked about the changes that we would make. Let's jump into the CP and wrap it up. Right now we have 64 points into Bless. This is going to increase our healing done by 13%. Very important right now. We've got 61 points into Elfborn, so our critical damage and critical healing done is increased by 21%, and that's very important as well. We've got 30 points into Elemental Expert, so that way our Flame, Frost, Shock, and magic damage is increased. And then we've got 54 points into Spell Erosion for 41,000 penetration. Because we are in 7 heavy right now, we have no penetration coming from the light armor passives, and so this is our only access to penetration. I can tell you when we go into BGs and we lose our CP, it's not really a problem because we're so darn tanky and our spell damage is high. We still chop people down even when we lose this. But for CP purposes, when you're CP Imperial City or dueling or whatever, you're going to want the penetration. So 61 points into Master at Arms, so that way it increases our direct damage done by 21%. That includes our toppling charge, and even though our puncturing sweep is an area of effect attack, it is actually listed as direct damage now. And it used to be listed as, it was a weird thing. It was like an initial hit was direct damage, and every attack after that was considered damage over time or a dot, and so you had to juggle between Master at Arms and Thaumaturge. Anyways, it's now considered direct damage, even though it's an area of attack, area of effect. And so that might change with some of the testing that they have going on right now. We'll find out. Nothing in the ritual. 61 points into Ironclad. All the heaviest hitting abilities in the game, for the most part, are going to be considered direct damage, and this is going to lower those attacks by 21%. Very important. Always go heavy into Ironclad. I'd say never less than 61. I do it on all my builds. I have 60 points into Spell Shield for an extra 4,400 resistance. This is how we're able to push the high resistance numbers that we need to. Do you need to put this here? No, but I like being over cap because we're almost always going to have some type of debuff on us, whether it's major fracture or major defile or major vulnerability from necros. And so I think that this is important, and I've been doing it on all of my builds. I have an extra 30 points into critical resistance for 844, and I have 15 points into Hardy, 15 points into Elemental Defender, so that way when we are on our sword and board bar, we have an extra 1500 physical resistance, spell and physical resistance. So this section right here is where I differ on my build than a lot of people, and we'll talk about that here in a second. 60 points in a heavy armor focus, and that gives us an extra 4400 physical resistance and 29 points into quick recovery for extra healing received. So anyways, on all of my builds, instead of dumping 60 points into Hardy, 60 points into Elemental Defender and getting Unchained, I don't really care about Unchained, especially on a Magicka class, but when you use break free, the cost of your next stamina ability used within 5 seconds is reduced by 80%. And for stamina classes, maybe that's important, but for me, I'm not so much worried about it, number one. But even on my stamina classes, I'm not worried about it. But I don't want to spend 60 points into this to get an extra 10% damage mitigation on an ability. I'd rather actually put 60 points into my heavy armor focus and beef up my base stats. I want my physical resistance numbers and my spell resistance numbers to look impressive and feel impressive in CP situations. And so that's how we get the numbers we get. And if you were to look at it, say you have a 10,000 physical damage ability coming in and you cut that attack by 10%, you just saved yourself 1,000 damage. You know, I would rather push max stats and just tank through that damage and not even notice it hitting me. And so that's kind of my thought process on it. And a lot of content creators go the other direction, and I'm completely fine with that. This works very well for me and has been. I do it on all my builds. We've got 30 points into Warlord, so we are going to be CC'd and we will need to break free, and this cuts the cost. This is not optimized. You'd want to get this to the 13% or above, so a couple extra points in there. But anyways, just a side note. 56 points into Mooncalf. When we dodge, roll, and block, we're going to, when we're not blocking, we need to be recovering stamina. So when we're moving around the battlefield and we're not sprinting, we're just moving, we need to be getting that stamina back so for the next dodge roll and whatever, break free. 64 points in Arcanist increases our magic recovery by 13%. That's important. 32 points into tenacity, so that way that this adds to. So in CP situations, you saw the perk on our heavy armor that increases the by 25% the return on fully charged heavy attacks for Magicka, and we get an extra 8% on top of that with this, and so that's important. 27 points into health recovery for an extra 7% to our health recovery. 61 points into tumbling. While our back bar is sword and board and we are block cast capable, I can tell you that the end is near if I'm block casting on my back bar for any amount of time. Like, I'm taking a lot of damage. I don't want to be holding block and just trying to out heal it. That's not how you currently want to play a Magplar. You actually want to put a toppling charge into your attacker, CC them, and try and put them on their back foot. How do we turn the fight? And because of that, sometimes when you're taking damage, don't just stand and hold block and try and fight through it. Momentum in a fight is a very finicky thing, and they can easily get momentum on you. Next thing you know, you burn through your Magicka and your stamina, and because they're light attack, heavy attack, weaving, whatever, they're still in the fight. It's no big deal. So it's much better to toppling charge into them, start putting pressure into them, and you do you. Don't worry about them. And be smart about it, buff up, and then go. But if you're going to mitigate some damage, you see somebody hard casting a crystal frag or whatever it is, tumbling is the way, to avoid that damage. And so that is the CP. Again, Wonder Woman, 7 heavy right now, and we really like where the stats are at on our sword and board and Destro, and you can see that our magic recovery is at 1661, and you can add another 1100 on top of that for 2 abilities that we're using, and we'll hit 2800 health recovery under 50% health. That makes us very bulky, tanky, and our stamina recovery is great. I really like where this build is. This right now in Greymoor with the lack of healing or sporadic healing, this build feels very good. So can't wait to get some BG footage out there to you guys. I'll start working on that stuff, and be safe out there. Thanks.